Hi there, I thought I would make this short video just to show off some of the performance improvements that you can get from upgrading to DaVinci Resolve Studio instead of using the free version. If you have an NVidia GPU, then the paid-for Studio version also includes support for hardware-accelerated encoding, which can greatly reduce the amount of time that it takes to export videos and also improve general performance of using the software. You've probably seen already, but there are several reasons to upgrade to Resolve Studio other than the hardware encoding, such as support for HDR content, HEVC, in other words H.265 encoded footage, 10-bit video, support for multiple GPUs, lots of Resolve effects including lens blur, sharpening, deflicker, lens flare, film grain, and lots more, spatial and temporal noise reduction, support for timeline footage greater than 4K, and also support for timeline footage greater than 60 frames per second. So this first video is taken before I upgraded to Resolve Studio, so this is just the free version, and I'm going to do a test export of a video that I produced a few weeks ago. It's not a hugely complicated timeline, but it has 3 video tracks and 3 audio tracks. And most of the footage is 4K drone footage from the DJI Mavic Air, combined with some 60 frames per second handheld footage from the Canon G7X and also some Fusion rendered compositions. You can see here that aside from setting the video format and resolution and frame rate, that all of the export settings are at their default value. So once we've checked these settings, we're going to begin the export and see how long it takes to run. I've also got Task Manager running here as well, so that you can see the CPU and GPU usage whilst it's exporting. You can see here that I'm running this on an Intel i7-8700K CPU at stock speed, which is a 6-core processor, and I've also got 16 gig of RAM and an NVidia GeForce RTX 2070 GPU. Now what I expect to see here is the CPU usage will be maxed out, but the GPU usage, because this is not hardware accelerated encoding, is only going to be used a small amount. And in fact, when we switch over, you'll see that some of that is down to running OBS Studio in the background in order to obtain this screen recording. But as we're going to run this in both cases, it won't affect the actual test outcome. I'm now going to speed this up and then cut to later in the recording so that we can just see how long it actually takes to complete. So as we come to the end of the recording here, we can see that it's finished rendering in 17 minutes and 30 seconds. I could see from most of the export that the processor was being used 100%, but the GPU never really got above 20%. So hopefully when we switch over to Resolve Studio now and run the same export again, we should see some higher GPU usage and a lower overall render time. So here we are in Resolve Studio with the same project loaded up. You can see one difference in the export tab now. We have an encoder option, which obviously I've set to NVIDIA to take advantage of the hardware encoding on my GPU. We're now going to start the export with the exact same settings as we used before. So it's a 4K 30 frames a second timeline, and see how long this takes to complete with the hardware acceleration in Resolve Studio. Straight away we can see the GPU usage is much higher now, almost hitting 100% at times, and the CPU in turn has actually dropped because most of the hard work is now being offloaded onto the RTX 2070. So it is pretty clear that this is now hardware accelerated and hopefully is going to finish a lot quicker than it did before. So just fast forwarding to the end of the recording now, I could see that it was running a lot faster than it was before, with the frame rates during the export in some cases above 50 frames per second, whereas before they were only really getting up into the teens or even single figures. And as it completes, it's finished in 6 minutes and 34 seconds instead of 17.5. So that's just over a third of the time that it took before. So quite a significant difference. Obviously your mileage is going to vary a little bit depending on how good a graphics card you've got. the RTX 2070 is still relatively new and quite a powerful card, so that has resulted in a significant decrease in render time, which I'm quite impressed with. The main reason I chose to upgrade to Resolve Studio was actually for the noise reduction and effects and everything else. So this improvement in render time really was just a bonus, but I'm actually quite surprised at how significant it is. And it's going to make a big difference in terms of how quickly I can produce videos from now on. So even though it isn't cheap at $299, I do recommend paying for the upgrade if you've got that money to spare, because not only are you supporting Blackmagic in improving the software in the future, but you are going to get some great features such as the noise reduction and obviously this improvement in render time as well. So thank you for watching the video, and see you again soon.